Welcome to Thought Garden on the Air, where we explore the stories, strategies, and skills that shape the most compelling personal brands and talented professionals today. I'm your host, Alexis Quintal, CEO and owner of Rosarium. We're a personal branding and public relations firm dedicated to helping entrepreneurs and business leaders and influencers monetize and elevate their personal brands. So we're really excited to be back for season 2, and we're expanding our focus this season beyond authors and into the broader world of personal branding and talent management. So whether you're an entrepreneur, influencer, or an expert building your unique narrative, we're here to amplify your voice. And today we have a great first guest for season 2. We're speaking with Tonya Fines, who is an author and an entrepreneur, and whose journey from surviving domestic violence to thriving as a successful professional in a new city is nothing short of inspiring. Through her story, she exemplifies courage, adaptability, and the power of networking. So welcome, Tonya. We're excited to have you.
Well, thank you. That's quite the intro. Thank you so much. It's an honor to go and just sit and chat with you in this, because we've had chats before, but this is really nice. This is going to be fun.
Mm-hmm. I know. Yeah. So I'll let you kind of go into more detail. I want to know more about like your life before relocating, what kind of led you to start new in the US.
Okay. Well, I'm from Canada. If that doesn't come out as we continue to speak, I'm sure there's usually, I've been out of Canada long enough that I think a lot of the Canadianese is out of my verbiage, but every once in a while I'll say something and somebody catches me on it. So grew up, born and raised, grew up in Canada, had a normal, nice childhood. I was very active in dance and performing arts and all of that stuff. Was always very, very creative. Got married, had a family, did all of that stuff. We had this huge 3,000 acre ranch in northern British Columbia, did all of that. And just one night sitting on the couch, I was looking at my husband, because we had built up a couple companies at that time. We were very, very successful. I mean, that was the one thing. Our marriage may not have worked out, but we were really good at coming together as a team and taking a thought or an idea and building it up into something really big. So, and it wasn't monetarily driven. It was just, we both had that kind of energy and that kind of drive. We like to create and build things and see them do really well and then sell them or whatever. So we're sitting on the couch one night and both of us sick of living in what was like 10 months of winter, because we lived way northern Canada in kind of like oil tax type industry. So I was sitting there and we because of how well we did, we were very fortunate in being able to do a lot of traveling, and we drug our 3 kids with us everywhere. So I was looking at him and I said, what's next? Like, we've done really well at this and this and this. And then I had just decided to start my, I had just like a couple months before that thought, okay, now that all 3 kids were in school full time, I started my own health and wellness company, because that was something that I was always, my career started. I was a high school health and wellness teacher. I was always into health and fitness and nutrition. I was always into that, but always also very creative. So I started up my own health and wellness business. And I was, at that time, copywriting really wasn't an industry. I was the copywriter. I did the email campaigns. I did all of that because I was the only one to do it. So when it came to anything in terms of visuals and graphics and marketing and branding and advertising, I just did it because that's what you did. Yeah. You started your little business and then you promoted it. So I was doing all of those things. So I said, what's next for us? I mean, this company that I started, it may become really big. It may stay kind of mainstream, mediocre, but like, what's our next adventure? Like, we've done a lot of big, big things, and we've been very fortunate and very blessed to do very well. Our kids are all doing really well in school and really well in all their extracurricular, but what's the next big thing? And I don't know, in our conversation, we somehow came upon the topic of, well, what if we sold everything and moved international? Give our kids, taking them on a holiday. That's what normal good parents do, right? Rip their kids everything they know away from all their family and all their friends and say, guess what? But we were just sitting in a really good place. I mean, financially, we were able to do it. Our parents were, at that time, all our parents were like, everybody was healthy and fine. So we thought, if we're going to do this, the kids were at an age too where it was a really good time to do it. So then we just thought, let's do it. Let's do it. And of course, we waited a while before telling anybody. But we started the process of looking into like immigration, what that would look like, where we wanted to go. And we landed on New Zealand because the language was going to be the same. The school systems were very good. It checked a lot of the boxes that we wanted as a family. So we started that process. Long story short, within 8 months of starting the process, we decided to use, because we were selling everything, but I was going to keep my company. I applied for a long-term business visa and we took that to New Zealand. We did. We just sold everything down to the forks, the knives, you name it, everything. And when we got on the plane, everybody had 2 suitcases and we went to New Zealand. And I tried building my business there. We also bought a wild dolphin charter business. So we lived there for 5 years. Life kind of fell apart. Our marriage fell apart. My dad got sick. Didn't just come right back to Canada. I had to come back to Canada for a bit, but I met somebody from Florida and I remarried, and that's how I ended up in Florida.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a journey. So are there any I guess you almost kind of mentioned that personal kind of turning points that got you here. What did this next chapter look like?
Well, I thought it was going to look great because it wasn't, after, again, I still had kids like in high school. One already graduated. My daughter was going to graduate in the next year. My son was 2 years behind that. So, I started the process of my husband decided he was going to move. He had met somebody, so he was going to move to Texas. And I thought, okay, well, in the meantime, I had met somebody. And so I thought, well, then I'm going to focus on Florida. I didn't want to move to Texas. I had already kind of through my health and wellness business. And I was also, I had made the New Zealand national bodybuilding team. So I was competing internationally and traveling around. So I had met people, I had gotten to know people in Tampa Bay specifically. So I thought, well, I'm going to focus on Tampa Bay than Florida, thinking that between the two of us, it's a 2-hour flight with kids and stuff. We're going to make this work, Mm-hmm. So he decides he does the move and he gets his butt to Texas and, he gets married and all that. And I come to Tampa and a little bit later I get married. But then that very quickly what turned very badly for me. There, within a few months of being married, I knew that I was in a situation that I needed to get out of as quickly as I could. So it's weird. Like I didn't have, my kids, kind of the way things happen. I was going to call my ex-husband and say, look, I think the kids need to come stay with you for a bit. I need to take care of some things over here. In the meantime, they got to an age where they were now ready to start, they wanted to get jobs and have some money. And as it turned out, minimum wage in Texas was almost twice what it was in Florida. So they decided that they wanted to go and be in Texas for a bit because they wanted to make a lot of money and buy their own vehicles and go to school and do things. And they wanted their own money. So I thought, okay, as much as that's mom, when your kids decide to go live somewhere else, that's heartbreaking. You don't think, you just think that's the end of my world. It gave me space to take care of, I had to get out. And at that point, I only needed to worry about getting myself out. So got them all settled in Texas. And then I saw them every month. So we saw them a lot, which was really good. But I was frantically trying to figure out a way to get out of my home and somewhere that I was going to survive and be okay. And that wasn't easy because I was Canadian. And even I came in, I had my green card. I had no right to access any resources, shelters, money, nothing, because I hadn't been here long enough to qualify for anything. So I was very you feel like a caged animal. You feel like you're stuck. There's no way out. And you just think of a tiger pacing. How do I get out? How do I get out?
What are your options?
The bars are too close together. There's no way out. There's no way out. So it took me probably from the time when I knew, I tried a lot of things in the meantime to, kind of help the situation, maybe save the marriage. A lot of time and money went into that. But eventually I was like, if I don't leave, this is going to end very badly for me. So I just started doing the things that I figured you did, hiding money when I was able to get some money, tuck it away somewhere, starting to I managed to get a storage locker in Clearwater. And when my ex was passed out drunk, I would throw whatever I could in his truck and I would drive it to Clearwater and just throw it in a storage locker, like things that I knew I wanted to keep that I didn't want destroyed. I still couldn't get any resources or money. However, I had a wonderful girlfriend that lived across the street. She hadn't been a girlfriend yet. She'd only moved in a few months before I moved into the house in Florida. And she was a cop. And I knew she was a cop.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
So one morning I was standing at the kitchen sink and my kitchen sink looked out onto the road. So her house was right across the street and she was always out. She had bought this house on the corner and she was very crafty at renovating. I mean, the house today looks like something out of Architecture Design magazine. She was on her days off. She was always out there sawing wood and like doing things, big things and renovating this house. So I was washing dishes and I remember looking out across the window and just a little voice in my head was like, go talk to her. And I thought, what if I got to, she's a cop. Like, what if I got to, what's the worst thing that can happen? So I walked across the street and I didn't know her really well. Like I knew her enough to, I knew her name enough to say hi. When she moved in, I went over and introduced myself and brought the muffins that you do, all those things.
Right.
But she's standing outside and I brought over a glass of iced tea for each of us and asking her, what are you doing? And what do you, she's showing me the house and what she was working on building. And I said, hey, can I talk to you? And she kind of gave me this look and she's like, yeah. And I said, I need to know I can talk to you off the record. And she said, okay, well, first I need to ask you a question. And I said, okay. And she said, are you safe? And at that point I thought, how does she knows something, but how does she know?
Right.
She was up at 4 and out the door by 4:30. And unless you were inside the house with us, you never would have known that there was anything going on. Because when we left the house, everybody looked perfect. Everybody behaved perfectly. Right.
Yeah.
I said, I'm safe for now. And so I just said, look, but I need to get out and I need to get out as soon as I can. So she, again, a couple conversations. And so what she did was she connected me with somebody from Julie Weintraub's association, Hands Across the Bay.
Okay. Yeah.
Again, I had reached out to Hands Across the Bay and they're like, we're really sorry. Like we can't help you because your status, you've only been here for however long. So she had worked on my neighbor had worked on or had helped somebody else, some woman. Somehow there was a connection. She became friendly with and got to know somebody on Julie Weintraub's in the association. So she did an email introduction to this woman. I want to say her name was Michelle, but I can't remember. And that really bothers me because I should remember this woman's name because without her, I don't know where I'd be. So we started emailing and she said, okay, she goes, she made some calls. She goes, I can't get you into a shelter. Do you have a vehicle? Like, what do you have and what don't you have? I can't get you into a shelter. Do you have your kids with you? And so we kind of started shortlisting. She kind of narrowed down exactly what my situation was and how we could do this. So she really guided me. She's like, here's what I need you to do. Hey, you got to go through and erase all your emails. Like anytime we talk, you've got to erase the emails. You've got to start, getting a bag with some cash in it somewhere you can hide it. You need to somehow find a place, like you need to, just some place to go. Do you have enough money for like a couple months rent? And at the time I had enough for like 3-4 months rent. And so she kind of, because when you're in that situation, when you're in that pressure cooker, you're so full of anxiety and fear and dread. Like, I mean, I was this university educated, multiple degrees, owned multiple companies, lived internationally. Like I had my shit together. Like, I was, all of a sudden I'm in this situation. I felt like completely helpless and
paralyzed,
stupid, and paralyzed and numb and like frantic. I didn't know to go right, left, up, down. I had no idea. And it was taking a toll on my health tremendously. I did a job. I'd landed a really good job with a company in Clearwater that I love. But again, I'm trying to be normal, go to work and act normal, like everything's fine. In the meantime, I'm trying to get this other thing set up so I can leave, And I did manage to, through friends who had an apartment in Tampa, whose lease was, they had 6 months left on the lease, but they weren't going to be living in the apartment anymore. And they said, look, if you want this apartment, we'll let you have it for this amount. So I got a really, really nice little place in Tampa for a really great price, not like what rent is now.
Right.
Just to give me a place to go. And
Wow.
In the meantime, the lady from Julie Weintraub's organization got me a gift card because she said, what are you going to need? Now that you have a place, what are you going to need? I'm like, dish soap, toilet paper, a fork, a knife, plate, like the basic stuff, right? So she got me a $500 gift card from Walmart so that I could get enough things to get by. So I ended up in Tampa in this tiny little place, and I didn't know a single person. And that was right during COVID. So I didn't not only know anybody, I had no family. And when I say I had no friends, I mean, I had the girlfriend in and she'd become a girlfriend by then in Dunedin, the town I was living in. But I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
You know, and here I was in the city, it was COVID. I couldn't even go out and meet people. And even if I could, I don't know that I would have, because it's been what? I left 6 years ago, officially divorced 4. But I think it took lots of therapy, a lot of therapy, multiple times a week for many years to be able to feel somewhat normal and leave the house and not be looking over my shoulder all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know you talk about networking a lot, right? It sounds like almost like networking is almost what saved you, it sounds like, right?
Oh,
Just getting connected
totally
to
did.
People. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Do you have any like strategies you would recommend to other people on how to like connect with the right people? Because some people hear networking and it's like a trigger word, right? They're like, I hate it. You know, it's awkward, but there's so many beautiful things that can come out of it.
I know. And that was me. I hated networking. I hated like put me get coffee with somebody or lunch with somebody or not a problem, but a room full of people to talk. Like I would light me on fire, please. It sounds like more fun. But when I was sitting in that apartment and, because I had no vehicle or nothing at the time, and I was already thinking that job that I had, I was like, I'm going to have to let that go because I can't, like, there's no way for me to get to work. I was like, okay, I needed to supplement my income. You know, I needed, I had enough for, at that point, when that was all said and done, I had enough money for 2 months rent because I got a storage locker for my stuff. I was Ubering around. You know, it took money to get me here. And wow, that took a lot. And now I need to start bringing in more than what I'm making because I'm going to end up on the street. And that was it. When I say that, I know it can sound like, like a metaphor or very extreme, but I was sincerely, genuinely afraid that I was going to end up on the street. I was that close to being homeless.
Yeah.
And I was like, it just made me sick to my stomach. So I'm like, okay, I need to, as much as I was, you know, if you know anybody or if you've ever been victim of any kind of violence, domestic violence, childhood abuse, putting yourself in front of people you don't know is terrifying. It's absolutely, the thought is terrifying. And then to do it is terrifying. But I knew that I had to do something. And the only way to do it was to get out and let people know who I was and what I did, because I wanted to continue working in that creative field. I wanted to continue writing. At the time, the job I was at, I was doing a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of podcasting, a lot of email campaigns and landing page content and like copy sales pages. And I loved that all. I loved it. I loved working in that development, and I wanted to do more of it. And I wanted to do more of it on my own as my own entity. But nobody was going to know that if I didn't get out there and tell them that I was here. So I started, I got on the internet and I started, Googling like, networking, coffee, lunch and learns, coffee things, just started doing my research as best I could. Right. And as luck would have it, I mean, God was on my side through all of this, because one of the first, as I'm doing this, I'm looking at stuff, but I'm also like, how do you know?
Yeah, right, exactly.
You can walk into
it's worth your time, right?
Right, and you know this as well, Alexis. There's no shortage of events and networking and luncheons and coffees and blah 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 to go to in Tampa. There's something every day of the week, but not all of them are worth your time. And that's not to say that those are bad. It's just they're not the right fit for you. So I had no idea, but I had somebody that I had sort of kind of knew. And they had reached out to me just like out of the blue. I hadn't heard from them in forever, but they just kind of reached out to me and said, hey, not sure where you're living these days, because we hadn't talked since before I moved, actually. But we got invited, her and her husband, we got invited to be guests at a Tampa Club guest member night. I had no idea what the Tampa Club was.
Right.
No idea. And I said, so I'm reading the email. So I Googled the Tampa Club and I'm like, well, from what I was reading, I'm like, I can't just, you have to be invited by somebody to go. And I was invited by somebody who was invited. So I'm like, I don't
know, right?
So I emailed her back, or I gave her a call and I said, hey, look, love it. Thanks for the invitation. Place looks great. But from what I'm understanding, I would actually have to be invited by a member, and you have been invited. I don't know that you can invite me. She said, just a sec, let me make a few calls. So she made a few calls. She called me back. She said, call the Tampa Club. You need to talk to a woman named Anne. Tell her who you are. Tell her that you talked to me. She's agreed to let you attend the night. So I did. I called. I talked to Anne, and Anne's like, absolutely. I've got you on the list. Here's how you get here. Here's how you get in.
Right.
And so a week later.
The rest is history.
That's where we met. Right. That's right. At that point, by this point, I was able to lease a small vehicle. So I had this little vehicle. And of course, if you've never been to the Tampa Club, it can be very daunting. Even though you give it instructions how to get in, it's just not.
It's like 10 steps.
I'm like, well, what? So I found street parking. I remember pulling in and thinking, oh, and I barely had enough money to pay for street parking. I was like, oh my God. But I downloaded the app and I paid for the street parking. I got out of the car. The first thing I did was I threw up all over the sidewalk because I was so nervous and anxious and
I can't even imagine you anxious about networking. You're the queen.
I finished getting sick. I get a text from the girl who told me that, come because we're going to be there. Text me, said, we're not going to make it. We're going to a house party instead. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. The one person that I was going to know in the room is not going to be there. But because I had paid for the parking, had I not paid for the parking, I'd have left.
You were like, well, I'm committed. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, shit, I paid for the parking. I have to go up. So I figure out how to get into the damn building. And the same thing, I get up, I'm going up the elevator. I'm like, I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be sick. Walk into the Tampa Club. Everybody's very nice. Go upstairs to the room where the networking events are. And I get up and at the little hostess stand, I'm like, where's the bathroom? And I got sick again. I'm like, I can't go in that room. I can't go in that room. Wow. But, thank God at the Tampa Club, if you're ever there, they have little things of mouthwash and stuff.
They do.
I clean myself up.
Now we know why, for people that are nervous about networking.
Right? Swished a couple things of mouthwash and I remember I just walked in the door and I stood there like frozen, and this lovely gentleman named Fab came over and introduced himself to me and said, you're new. I said, I am. And he said, do you know anybody here? I said, I don't. And he took me around and he introduced me to a couple people and thus started some conversations. And that night, again, God was totally on my side. I met Maureen Famiano, Doug Smoss, Paul Carver. I had I got into conversations with Rosie Paulson and her husband, Scott. I couldn't have I met some pretty big power hitters that night in Tampa and had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so how has all of this, the journey and your experience, how has this impacted your personal brand and your entrepreneurial goals?
Well, the impact was huge because at that point I realized that was a game changer. It's okay, now you're here, you showed up and people are now listening. And I will say this to anybody listening. I've lived in Canada, I've lived in New Zealand, now I've lived here in Florida. Tampa Bay has, when it comes to networking, hands down the best. It's actually I've lived in places, I've actually run networking chapters in other cities I live in. And they're they're okay. But in Tampa, when people are talking with you and they're asking for your card and they want to know how to help you and how to refer you, they're actually because they are intending to do that, which completely shocked me. I'm like, these people actually mean it. So I knew that I had to show up. I wasn't, I could, as much as I was still living scared for about 2 years, I faked it really, really well, And I showed up, I forced myself to talk, to introduce, learned how to calm down and just go over and introduce myself to somebody and talk with them. And it's like a muscle. As you exercise, it just grows. It just grows.
So
So
true.
it was very impactful in that when I got to Tampa, and I think of where I was when I got here, and then how within 2 months of being in the city of Tampa, the people that I met and the friendships that I made, I have no words. I have no words. I met people that today are dear, dear friends, dear friends.
Yeah. Have you had any challenges kind of integrating into the professional community? I mean, it sounds like you've had really great experiences, met great people. How has that actually shaped you as like a business owner, right? How have you been able to kind of elevate your own success?
Right. Well, what I learned was that there was a lot more I needed to learn in terms of running my own business by myself, like, being on my own in a new place, in a new city. So just like some of the normal like admin stuff, like taxes here versus New Zealand versus Canada. Cause I went from Canada, then lived in New Zealand, learned all of that, how that all worked. And then to the US, learning how all that all works. So there's all of that, but also just, when you move around, when you move into and you don't necessarily have to change countries. It can just be changing cities, counties, states. It can be a very small move, but it's very important to pay attention to the culture.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people talk about vibe, and yes, there's definitely a vibe. There's a current that's really cool and lovely, and it's awesome. But there's also a culture here, and it's really important to pay attention to the culture, because when you can tap into that and align with that culture, your conversations are going to be more meaningful and more impactful. People are going to hear you differently because it's like you're speaking the same language. And it's an element of when you come in from somewhere else, being, we'll say, an outsider. It's not necessarily that people will intentionally treat you like an outsider, but if you don't understand the culture and the people, it can be very hard to connect with them. So that's really key. So that's something
that adaptability.
And that's something that, luckily I did a lot of traveling in my life. So for me, like stepping into new places and stuff, and that was not difficult, but I realized here how important that was in business, because business in Tampa is very relational.
Yeah.
Right. And the lovely thing about Tampa is, I mean, it's a city, but it very much, my opinion anyways, it has a small town feel. And if you are not a person of integrity and honesty and, all of those good qualities, word gets around fast.
Right.
It does.
Everyone knows each other, or there's like only maybe 2 degrees of separation. So it's really important.
That's right. So it's amazing how quickly you will maybe not necessarily meet the person, but they will know about you. So you need to really think about that is, how are you showing up? Because that is how you're going to be talked about or, shared in other groups with other people. And that, and to me, that was a really lovely thing, because again, coming out of the situation I had, domestic violence, and being very, like, for 2 years, like really, like if somebody dropped a glass behind me, I lost it. Like any loud noise, and I was terrified. So for me, when I was attending a new event or a new networking or a new gala or fundraiser, because all of a sudden the invitations started coming in really, really quick.
Right. That's the fun thing about networking.
Right. And so I felt really good walking into a place, because I understood that a lot of vetting had already been done. There may be people there I didn't know, but chances were 99% or greater that if that person was at this event by invitation, like myself, they kind of passed a test, as far as the character.
Right. That's so true. Yeah. And I don't know if you feel this way too, but one thing I love about networking too is in high school and middle school, like I was never popular. I was usually the one sitting alone at the table and like getting bullied by the popular kids. And, so I wasn't like cool on social media, MySpace, whatever we had back then. But now I feel like
I'm older than
yeah, but I mean, now it's kind of cool because you almost get the opportunity to like recreate who you are, right? And how you approach new relationships and what impression you give people. So that stuff doesn't really matter. But for me, it almost makes it more fulfilling, because I'm like, well, I think people actually like me. And, I have to get over the imposter syndrome of,
yes.
I'm not cool, or, I'm not popular or whatever. And
Yeah.
it's not really about that anymore.
It isn't, but I can't imagine you not being popular, because for those of you who haven't met Alexis, she's just this sweet little like pixie powerhouse, like all these wonderful things wrapped into this powerful little package. So I can't imagine, but I get it. I was bullied. Oh my God, I was bullied.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was tall up until grade 12. I was taller than all the boys.
I'm the opposite. I was always the shortest one.
I was super tall. I had red hair. And back in that day, like curly red hair, we didn't have products. Nobody knew what to do with it. My mother brushed it. So I had this bush.
Right. It's just
frizz. I wore glasses. I had freckles. I mean, you name it.
But those are the things that people notice about you, and it's so beautiful.
I love your hair. I'm like, thank you.
Right. It's like the first thing you notice is your amazing hair. But yeah,
it took half a century for this to be cool, but thank you.
Hey, that's okay. I'd rather later in life than earlier, right?
Right. But it did. I think when I think back, I can laugh at those. Like there's a lot of painful memories there. But when I think back, I'm like, wow, that's what gave me the resilience. Because even again, when I did get to Tampa, and I was like, you can go from being a very strong, powerful, independent person, and when you get in the wrong relationship, it can completely destroy all of that. I felt
confidence.
Felt like nothing again. I felt like nothing again. And I remember I went through a period of time where at night I just prayed, like, take me my sleep. Like I didn't want to, I seriously did not want to wake up. Like, just give me a heart attack, give me a stroke. I don't know. Somebody can break in and like kill me. Just please let me die tonight so I don't have to wake up tomorrow. That was my goal, to not have to wake up. Didn't happen. I kept waking up. So, but you're right. You get the chance to, like, I had to rebuild my life, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, the circumstances for why I had to sucked, but the fact that I had to under such extreme circumstances, I'm very, very grateful for, because I do have resilience. I do have strength. If you knock me down, run, because I'm coming up real fast.
Right.
It gives you that vision to be like, well, wait a second, things aren't going to get any worse unless I completely give up, which I wasn't going to do. But how do I want this to look? All of it, from where I want to live, how I want to dress, the neighborhood I want to be in, the friends I want to have, not just the events I want to go to and the jobs I want to get, but how do I want all of it to look? And I got to rebuild it from scratch, like literally from scratch.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's really fueled your passion for, writing. I know you're a best-selling author. You share your story. We're booking you for speaking opportunities, and, you're obviously an entrepreneur, but what's next on the horizon for you? Anything like exciting you can share?
Well, definitely more books. I love writing, and I write every day. So I do want to do a follow-up. The book that my recent book, I keep saying I'm turning it into a course, and I got all the modules written, but I have to add the video. Okay. There's the course for it. I also want to turn that one into an audiobook, so I have to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
But I want to write a follow-up book to it. And I made a joke about it at the book launch that you arranged for me. And I made a joke about the fact that, having to start over so many times. Now, this one was this was definitely the most difficult and the most emotional, the most trying on me. But I made a joke about maybe that should be my next book, starting over 2.0, something like that. But I think that's going to be the next one, about starting over, because it's not that uncommon that people have to start over or are forced to start over. And it can be, especially when you've had everything, and when you lose it, the basic thought of getting up and making a cup of coffee seems like way too much to take on in a day. It's like, can't even think about how to do that right now.
Yeah. Feels like a lot of heavy weight.
There's tremendous resources in your community. And that's what I realized when I forced myself to get up, get on the computer, start looking for events. Got to the Tampa Club, met 5 really great people. From there, I got invitations to other things, and it just started to happen.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. So where can our listeners connect with you? What's the best place to connect with you online? Well,
they've got So my email, which I believe you have, Alexis, my email.
Mhm.
I'm always too. I'm very open with my phone for contact. Also, I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram, TM Fines. I'm on Facebook, Tonya Fines. I'm on LinkedIn, Tonya Fines. It's really not hard to find me. If you type my name into Google, you're going to find a lot of places that you can find me. So I'm very easy to find and very open to speaking with people, because I think when you stand up and share your story in a way that you're not ashamed of it, because there's no reason to be ashamed. I mean, bad things happen to good people all the time. But when you stand up and start to share your story, whether that's speaking, a podcast, a book, you basically give other people permission to finally drop their mask and share their story and ask for help.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing for me, is being able to talk about it freely, and hopefully that, even if there's one person in the audience that it resonates with, it gives them permission to be vulnerable, fall apart a little, and ask for help to get better.
Mm-hmm. And where you've had people open doors and welcome you, I'm sure that's something you also would want to, give back to others.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining.
Well, thank you for having me. This is great.
So with that, we conclude another episode of Soft Garden Season 2. So if you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to follow us on Spotify, YouTube, and social media for more inspiring stories and actionable insights. Do you have a story to share or know someone who does? Reach out to us at rosarium.work or on our social media. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Soft Garden.